On a winter street, white frost flowers condensed on the cement road surface, making every step slippery and causing people to walk cautiously, yet still prone to falling. Crystal-clear ice flowers adorned the trees on both sides of the road, decorating everything in a silver-white world, exuding a cold beauty. Since it was still early, there were hardly any pedestrians on the road. A lonely small figure, holding a rag doll in her arms, walked slowly on the street, exhaling warm breath from her mouth to warm her nearly frozen little hands. The little girl appeared to be about 6 or 7 years old, dressed in ragged clothes, with messy hair and a dirty appearance. Her big eyes and thick eyelashes, her face turned purple from the cold. The girl had a beautiful name, Yo-Yo, given to her by her mother when she was little. Yo-Yo remembered clearly that when she was young, she was her mother's precious baby, living a happy and joyful life every day. When she was 6, a sudden serious illness took her mother's life. Yo-Yo remembered very clearly that at that moment, her mother stared at her with wide-open eyes, collapsed in front of her, and never got up again. Since that day, Yo-Yo felt like she didn't exist at home. During the day, her father would lock her alone in a spacious room, leaving some food, and only at night, sometimes even late at night, would he come back drunk, but he seemed too lazy to even look at Yo-Yo and would fall asleep immediately. Every day, locked in the room, Yo-Yo could only quietly look at the photo of her mother on the wall, missing the days with her mother. Occasionally, feeling too bored, Yo-Yo would move a small stool to sit inside the protective wall of the balcony, watching the pedestrians coming and going on the street through the wire mesh, often wondering if her mother would suddenly come back one day to hug her. Since Yo-Yo started speaking, she had shown her unusual ability. She would often see things that others couldn't see at all. Yo-Yo remembered when she was a little over 2 years old, after dinner, her mother took her for a walk in the residential area where they lived. Suddenly, usually very quiet, Yo-Yo shouted at a pregnant woman in front, "Mom, Mom, that aunt is carrying a child in red clothes on her back." Her mother looked ahead and saw only a pregnant woman. Where was there any child? Yo-Yo kept shouting and broke free from her mother's hand, running quickly to the woman, holding her hand. "Auntie. Auntie. You are carrying a little girl in red on your back, she is biting your neck, you are going to die soon." The pregnant woman looked at Yo-Yo with disgust, shook off her hand. "Whose naughty child is this? How come the adults don't discipline her? How can she be so rude, cursing me to die?" She glared at Yo-Yo and intended to walk away. Yo-Yo blocked her way again, seriously telling her, "Auntie, I'm telling the truth. You are really going to die. Get away." The woman finally couldn't bear it, pushed Yo-Yo away, cursing, and looked around for Yo-Yo's family, ready to argue with them. Seeing this, Yo-Yo's mother quickly ran over, apologizing to the woman. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The child is too young and doesn't understand, please forgive her, I will educate her." She quickly picked up Yo-Yo. "Yo-Yo, how can you say that to the auntie? It's wrong to talk like that, do you understand?" "No, Mom, look. This auntie is really going to die. The little girl in red on her back is grinning at me." Seeing the little girl in red on the woman's back grinning and making faces at her, Yo-Yo became anxious. "Alright, stop talking, Mommy is angry, let's go home." Her mother seemed very angry, holding Yo-Yo and about to leave. Ah! A scream was heard, and the pregnant woman who was fine just now, her fat body slowly fell to the ground. What happened? People walking in the residential area heard the scream and ran towards the woman. "Mom, look!" Yo-Yo didn't lie, she was tripped by the little girl in red on her back. Hearing Yo-Yo's words, her mother was startled. Could Yo-Yo see things that others couldn't? Looking at the woman who fell to the ground, she had just tripped, her back of the head hit a big stone, and blood flowed all over the place. "Mom, look, the little girl is gone." Yo-Yo pointed ahead and told her mother. Seeing Yo-Yo's cute little face, her puzzled mother quickly carried Yo-Yo and hurried home. Since then, Yo-Yo could see many strange things everywhere, whether on the street or anywhere else. What frightened Yo-Yo's mother was that Yo-Yo would always point at passers-by for no reason and tell them they were about to die. And every time, not long after Yo-Yo said it, even before her mother could finish apologizing to them, those people Yo-Yo said would die would mysteriously have some accidents and die bizarrely. Over time, people got to know about Yo-Yo, and neighbors in the community began to deliberately avoid Yo-Yo's family. Behind their backs, they secretly gossiped that Yo-Yo was an ominous person, a little demon, a child cursed by the Grim Reaper, and whoever she said would die, would indeed die. Yo-Yo's father was a man who valued sons over daughters. He had been indifferent to Yo-Yo's birth, and now with such incidents happening, he became even colder towards Yo-Yo, showing no kindness at all. Only Yo-Yo's mother believed in Yo-Yo, believing that Yo-Yo must have some unknown special ability. She comforted Yo-Yo, thinking that one day when Yo-Yo grew up, she would take Yo-Yo to see a witch to find out what special ability Yo-Yo possessed. As days went by, because of Yo-Yo, her mother tried to avoid unnecessary trouble by mostly leaving Yo-Yo alone at home. Yo-Yo also knew that the things she saw would always scare others and cause her mother a lot of trouble, so she always obediently stayed at home waiting for her mother to come back. Yo-Yo didn't care about her father's indifference as long as she had her mother's love. One day when Yo-Yo was 6, suddenly, without any warning, misfortune befell Yo-Yo's mother. Early in the morning, Yo-Yo saw a dark, bulky ghost in black clothes, holding a small knife made of white bones, stabbing her mother's chest slowly and steadily. Yo-Yo screamed and rushed over, trying to push the ghost in black away from her mother. The ghost let out a cold laugh, and with a sweep of its wide sleeve, Yo-Yo was thrown far away. "Mom! Mom!" Yo-Yo watched as her mother's face turned pale, and she clutched her chest tightly before collapsing. Yo-Yo crawled to her mother, using her tender little hands to keep pushing her mother's head. Her mother couldn't make a sound even until she died, her eyes wide open, looking at Yo-Yo with lingering concern. Her mother died, of an acute heart attack. But only Yo-Yo knew how her mother died. She was stabbed to death by the ghost in black. The only person in the world who loved Yo-Yo was gone. Her mother's death led to more malicious gossip about Yo-Yo in the community. People avoided Yo-Yo like the plague, and the calls to ostracize Yo-Yo grew louder. That little demon even cursed her own mother to death. Everyone should be careful. Stay away from that child. Seeing her means bad luck or even death. Listening to people gossip about Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo's father, who had just lost his wife, hated Yo-Yo even more. It's unclear how much time passed, but one day, in broad daylight, Yo-Yo's father came home unexpectedly, bringing with him a woman with heavy makeup and dressed flamboyantly. Yo-Yo only knew that her father told her to call that woman Mom. Looking at the woman's heavily painted face, Yo-Yo timidly called her Mom under her father's angry roar. From that day on, Yo-Yo was no longer alone at home. Every day after her father went to work, only that woman and Yo-Yo were left at home. At first, the woman, although not as loving as Yo-Yo's mother, would still cook meals for Yo-Yo on time, so for the first time since her mother's death, Yo-Yo felt cared for again and gradually began to rely on the woman. However, the peaceful days didn't seem to last long. Soon, stories about Yo-Yo being a little demon reached the woman's ears. The woman began to deliberately distance herself from Yo-Yo, and sometimes, if she felt unwell, she would vent her anger on Yo-Yo, believing that Yo-Yo, the unlucky disaster star, brought her misfortune. Gradually, from the initial slaps to kicking, and then to hitting Yo-Yo with objects, Yo-Yo's life turned into a nightmare. Yo-Yo's father completely ignored the woman's abuse towards Yo-Yo, acting as if he didn't see anything. Many nights, Yo-Yo curled up in a corner like an injured kitten, huddling her small body, crying and calling for her mother, and eventually falling asleep alone. From then on, getting beaten became a daily routine for Yo-Yo, with new injuries piling on top of old ones. The 5 or 6-year-old girl became numb to the pain. Later, no matter how her stepmother beat her, Yo-Yo would look at the vicious woman with a blank expression, not uttering a single word or cry of pain. Finally, one day, the woman had an argument with Yo-Yo's father over a trivial matter. After hysterically cursing at Yo-Yo's father, she still felt unsatisfied and grabbed Yo-Yo, who was standing by the door, and slapped her head. Yo-Yo was knocked to the ground, blood flowing from her nose. The woman didn't stop because of Yo-Yo's nosebleed. She continued to kick and beat Yo-Yo, who was rolling on the ground. The sight of the bright red blood deeply hurt Yo-Yo's young heart, and she instantly felt a surge of hatred, thinking that if she grew up one day, she would make the woman pay for what she did today. She would use a fork to stab that messy and ugly face. Just as Yo-Yo thought of this, she heard a clang, and a fork from the dining table glinted silver as it flew in an arc and stuck into the woman's heavily powdered face. The woman let out a scream, and blood flowed down her cheek. Everyone in the house was stunned. Yo-Yo herself was also stunned. She didn't understand how just thinking about it made the fork actually stab the woman's face. Seeing the woman pounding on her father's chest, Yo-Yo thought hatefully that it would be great if a bowl of chili oil were poured on the woman's face right now. A buzzing sound was heard, and the bowl of chili oil that the woman had fried herself spun and flew towards her face. The woman was stunned by the sudden bowl. Yo-Yo's father reacted and tried to knock the bowl to the ground, but it was too late. The bowl was overturned, and the red chili oil poured down the woman's face. Ah! My face, my eyes. It hurt so much. The woman rolled on the ground in pain. Yo-Yo paused for a moment and suddenly understood what was happening. She could make things happen just by thinking about them. Yo-Yo laughed, watching the woman wailing on the ground, and giggled out loud. Hearing Yo-Yo's laugh, the woman seemed to understand something. Kill her. It's her, it must be her. She ruined my face. She's not human, she's a demon, kill her, kill her. The woman hysterically shouted for Yo-Yo's father to kill Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo's father glanced at the small, scarred Yo-Yo, sighed, opened the door, and said, "Get out. Leave, and never come back to this house, do you hear me?" He grabbed Yo-Yo and threw her out the door. Bang! The door was slammed shut. "Give me back my doll. Give me back my doll." Yo-Yo cried and pounded on the closed door. Whoosh! The door opened, and a rag doll was thrown out. Bang! The door was slammed shut again. Yo-Yo understood that her father had completely abandoned her. She had no home anymore. With tears in her eyes, she picked up the rag doll from the ground and wandered aimlessly in the chilly autumn wind. So cold, so hungry. Looking at the rag doll in her arms, Yo-Yo thought of her mother again. "Mom, where are you? Please come and take Yo-Yo away." In the cold, dark night, a small body curled up in a corner of a garbage pile, with tear stains on her face, fell asleep. Thus, Yo-Yo began her life of wandering. When she was hungry, she would rummage through garbage piles for something to eat, and occasionally kind-hearted people would give her some food. When she was cold, she would pick up discarded clothes from residents and drape them over herself. The weather was getting colder and colder, and the winter ice and snow left Yo-Yo without a place to stay. It was too cold to sleep, so Yo-Yo would keep stomping her feet and walking back and forth on the asphalt road to warm her nearly frozen body. When dawn broke and the sun rose, Yo-Yo felt a bit of warmth. Hearing her stomach growling, Yo-Yo remembered that she hadn't eaten anything for more than a day. Starving, Yo-Yo came to a breakfast shop. She was so hungry. Looking at the steaming hot bread, Yo-Yo swallowed hard. Standing quietly on the side, she watched people come and go, eating breakfast. Staring at the bread on the table, Yo-Yo couldn't resist any longer and silently wished she could eat the big, fragrant bread in front of her. Whoosh, 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 after a few sounds, the bread on the table flew into the air and landed in Yo-Yo's arms. Yo-Yo grabbed the bread and quickly ran into an alley. Once there, she squatted down and, with her dirty little hands, began to devour the bread. As Yo-Yo was eating, she suddenly heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to see a group of young people with long hair and fashionable clothes standing in front of her. The man leading them came up to Yo-Yo, looked her up and down carefully, and said, "How old are you, little one? Quite capable, huh? You even dared to steal our bread?" Yo-Yo knew she was in trouble, but at least her stomach was full. Thinking this, she stuffed the remaining bread into her clothes and looked at the people in front of her with a blank expression. Wow! She's quite brave. Look, brothers, she's not even a bit scared, the man said, pointing at Yo-Yo and turning to his companions. I'm curious, how did you steal the bread? How did it just fly into your arms? Hey, with that skill, why steal bread? Why not steal something valuable and avoid this suffering? The man tugged at Yo-Yo's ragged clothes. Look! Look! How can such a little kid endure this suffering? Little one, come with us. As long as you do what we say, I promise you'll have good food and clothes. How about that? Yo-Yo still didn't say anything. In this world, besides her deceased mother, Yo-Yo didn't trust anyone. Seeing that Yo-Yo remained silent, the group said, "You can't be mute, can you? Come on, let's take her back first." They moved to grab Yo-Yo's ragged clothes. Seeing this, Yo-Yo thought about the benches in front of the breakfast shop flying over to drive these people away. Sure enough, with a buzzing sound, several benches spun and flew towards the young people, knocking them to the ground. Ah! 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 They screamed as the benches hit them. The leader, seeing Yo-Yo standing still, shouted, "This kid is weird, brothers, run." Yo-Yo watched the group limping away and disappearing, then used her mind to return the benches to the breakfast shop. The breakfast shop owner was so shocked that he was speechless for a long time. Thus, enduring hunger and cold, Yo-Yo survived day by day. Recently, she saw street vendors selling firecrackers and heard adults talking about preparing for the new year. During her days of wandering, Yo-Yo had seen many strange things and encountered many bizarre events. But she knew that the reason everyone disliked and hated her was because she could see these things and predict people's deaths. So Yo-Yo deeply hated her ability to see these things. She secretly decided that no matter where she was, even if she saw anything, she would pretend not to see it and avoid it. Looking at the bustling streets with shops decorated with lanterns and streamers, Yo-Yo wondered how her mother would celebrate the new year with her if she were still around. When her mother was alive, Yo-Yo was too young to remember how they celebrated the new year. Thinking that it had been over a year since her mother left her, sometimes Yo-Yo couldn't even remember her mother's face clearly, which made her very sad. She blamed herself for being too young, and now, having been kicked out by her father, she didn't even have a photo of her mother, so she only had a vague impression of her mother. Watching children in bright new clothes riding on adults' shoulders, holding strings of lollipops, with their mothers lovingly coaxing them, Yo-Yo felt extremely envious. She quietly followed behind the family, greedily watching the child being pampered. Watching the family of three gradually disappear from sight, Yo-Yo kicked a discarded paper box at her feet out of boredom. The rustling sound made Yo-Yo feel a little less lonely. Lazily, she looked up at the sun in the sky, thinking that with the warm sunlight, she should find a place to sleep for a while. Thinking of this, she looked around carefully, trying to find a sunny spot to sleep. Suddenly, Yo-Yo froze. What did she see? A group of people, a group of middle-aged men with dusty faces. A group of people was not unusual, but what surprised Yo-Yo was that a group of little spirits was closely following behind them. The spirits were playful, tugging at the men's clothes as they ran forward. Looking more closely at the group of men walking ahead, they were dressed like ordinary folks but were a bit dirty and dusty, as if they had just crawled out from underground. Each of them carried a large bundle on their backs, bulging with unknown contents. Judging by their walking posture, the bundles seemed to be quite heavy. Normally, Yo-Yo would ignore such things, pretending not to see them and turning away. But seeing so many little spirits together was a first for her. She counted them silently, there were 15 in total. And all these spirits looked like children, which piqued Yo-Yo's strong curiosity. She couldn't help but follow the group of men out of the city. Once outside the city, the group headed straight for a forest in the southeast and plunged in. Yo-Yo cautiously followed them into the woods. After walking for a long time, the group showed no signs of stopping, and Yo-Yo began to feel she couldn't keep up. As the group got further and further away, Yo-Yo thought about giving up. She wondered why she was following them. Hadn't she decided not to meddle in other people's affairs? If she hadn't followed them, she could have had a nice nap by now. Just as Yo-Yo was about to sit down and rest before heading back to the city, she looked up and saw that the group had stopped and were sitting on the ground resting. Seeing this, Yo-Yo quickly crouched down and hurried a few steps, hiding behind a tree close to them, watching their actions secretly. There were 5 people in the group, one of whom was an older man, probably in his 50s. The other 4 were around 30, all with ruddy, weather-beaten faces and sturdy builds, looking like people who did heavy labor. But something seemed off about them that Yo-Yo couldn't quite pinpoint. The 15 little spirits were sprawled across the men, squinting their eyes in apparent comfort. Watching these contented spirits, Yo-Yo didn't feel afraid, she even found them amusing. They seemed so happy, playing together, unlike her, who was always alone. Thinking of this, Yo-Yo's eyes filled with tears again. Since her mother died, she had lost count of how many times she had cried herself awake from nightmares and how many tears she had shed. Suddenly, one of the men spoke. A thin man said, "Boss, although we lost half of our brothers in this tomb robbery, the haul was substantial. Who would have thought that ancient tomb would have so many traps? Thinking of our dead brothers, it really hurts. Once we sell off these treasures, we should get a good price. I'm done with this dangerous job after this. Once I have the money, I'm going to enjoy life." So, they were tomb robbers. It seemed they had looted a large tomb and obtained many treasures. They planned to temporarily bury the loot in this forest. After sitting for a while, the men decided to dig a hole here, marking the trees nearby with secret signs, and discreetly burying the treasures. Seeing no one around, they quickly dug a deep but not very large hole. They then took the treasures out of their bundles, leaving only 1 or 2 items for the oldest man. The rest were carefully wrapped in plastic, tied with ropes, and placed into the hole. To prevent the soil from damaging the treasures, they placed many small branches horizontally over the hole before covering it with soil. They tamped the soil down with their feet and scattered some weeds over it to conceal it. After patting the dirt off their hands, the men looked relieved. The leader spoke, "None of you are allowed to dig up the treasures on your own. If anyone does, the others will kill him." The men all nodded solemnly in agreement. After the elder finished instructing them, the group headed back to the city. Yo-Yo silently followed them, or rather, the group of little spirits. The 5 men found an inn and seemed to plan to stay the night. So, Yo-Yo found a corner near the inn where they were staying, took out a rock-hard piece of bread from her clothes, and slowly began to gnaw on it. The next morning, Yo-Yo hid in a dark corner, watching the people coming out of the inn. There they were, the same group from yesterday, followed by a string of little spirits. Yo-Yo quickly and quietly followed them, seeing that they were heading towards the train station in the city. Before long, the group arrived at the train station square. Suddenly, Yo-Yo noticed the little spirits behind the men chattering excitedly, then suddenly jumping onto the men and furiously pounding their heads with their fists. "Ah, ah!" All 5 men clutched their heads, groaning loudly. "Boss, boss, my head hurts so much. Help me, it hurts so bad. I can't take it. It hurts so much." The oldest man, referred to as the boss, was also in unbearable pain. He looked back at his group, all clutching their heads and crying out in pain. His heart skipped a beat. Quickly find a place to rest nearby." The men, enduring the pain, ran to a nearby inn by the train station. Yo-Yo watched everything clearly from the side, knowing that the men had been cursed by the little spirits. Watching them stumble into the inn, Yo-Yo quietly found a sunny spot and closed her eyes. Yo-Yo was comfortably basking in the warm sunlight when a few terrible screams startled her awake. A crowd was rushing towards the inn where the 5 men had just entered. Yo-Yo squeezed into the crowd and saw that it was indeed the same 5 men. But now, they were writhing in pain on the ground, their eyes bloodshot, and their bronze faces contorted in agony. Yo-Yo couldn't bear to watch any longer. She walked over to the boss, the oldest of the 5 men, and squatted down beside him. "Grandpa, why did you provoke a group of little spirits to follow you? Your headaches are because these spirits are pounding your heads." "What? What are you saying, child?" Despite the severe pain, the boss's mind was still clear. He looked at Yo-Yo in confusion, seeing a little beggar with serious black eyes staring at him. Looking at his companions, all in the same state, clutching their heads and writhing in pain, the old man began to wonder. Could this child be telling the truth? "We just came out of that tomb, could we have brought something unclean with us?" "Child, are you saying you can see that we are cursed by spirits?" The boss grabbed Yo-Yo's small hand, wanting further confirmation. Yes, I saw you yesterday on the road, and there were over a dozen little spirits following you." Yo-Yo said earnestly. "What? You saw us yesterday?" The boss was startled. "Can you tell me what else you saw?" he asked, testing the child in front of him. "I saw you leave the city and enter a forest, and then..." Before Yo-Yo could finish, the boss covered her mouth with one hand and made a shushing gesture with the other, stopping her from continuing. Now, the boss completely believed what the little beggar-like child was saying. He understood that it couldn't be a coincidence that all of them had the same headache at the same time. Besides, having dealt with the dead all his life, he deeply believed in the existence of spirits. Realizing this, the boss gritted his teeth and called his companions to get up. Holding the little beggar's hand, he staggered towards the inn's room. The group of people supported each other as they returned to the inn room. The man referred to as the boss collapsed onto the bed, holding Yo-Yo's dirty little hand. "Child, don't tell anyone about what happened in the forest yesterday, okay?" Yo-Yo nodded seriously. "Grandpa, I won't say anything. But it's true, there's a group of little spirits hitting you. They might beat you to death." "I understand, child. From now on, you can call me Grandpa. It seems we've been cursed by something unclean." The man, now called Grandpa, looked back at his companions, who were still writhing in pain. He turned back to little Yo-Yo and asked, "Child, how can you see those unclean things? Can you tell Grandpa?" Yo-Yo stared with her big eyes at the old man's face, who nodded kindly. So, Yo-Yo recounted her story, how she was seen as an unlucky person, how her mother died, how her father brought home a stepmother who abused her, how she used her mind to throw a fork at her stepmother's face, and how her father kicked her out of the house in anger. She told the old man everything she could remember in detail. After hearing Yo-Yo's story, the old man hugged her tightly. After a while, he decided to return to the ancient tomb. He understood that, based on Yo-Yo's account, they had been haunted by the little spirits. If they didn't return what they took from the tomb, the 5 of them might not survive. Strangely enough, as soon as the boss shared his plan to return the treasures, the headaches of all 5 men instantly disappeared. They touched their heads in bewilderment. "The spirits have left you alone, so you're not in pain anymore," Yo-Yo said, smiling sweetly at the little spirits on the ground. The men listened to the boss's decision in silence, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. The boss understood that it was difficult for them to accept returning the hard-earned treasures after losing 5 brothers for them. "Brothers, it's come to this. We need to prioritize our lives. Think of our dead brothers, without life, what use our treasures?" The old man sighed deeply, feeling reluctant himself. Just as they were about to get rich, the opportunity was slipping away. "If you want to return the treasures, go ahead, but please give me my share." "I need the money," insisted a thin man, refusing to return his share. No sooner had the thin man finished speaking than several little spirits jumped onto him, biting and tearing at him. The thin man wobbled and fell, hitting his temple on the corner of the bedside table, causing blood to gush out. Before anyone could react, the thin man lay silent on the ground, a pool of thick blood spreading towards the door. The men were terrified. The old man looked at Yo-Yo and said, "Child, let's go." He bent down, picked up Yo-Yo, and walked out of the inn. The others, seeing the boss leave, followed him out in a hurry. No one spoke, they were all scared by what had just happened. Their only thought was to return the treasures quickly and escape the vengeful spirits. The group hurried to the spot where they had buried the treasures. With a grim face, the boss dug up the soil and hoisted the plastic-wrapped bundles onto his shoulder. Holding Yo-Yo's hand, he strode towards the ancient tomb. No one spoke along the way. As dusk fell, the boss stopped at a desolate hillside. "You all stay here with Yo-Yo. I'll go in alone to return the treasures." He bent down, pulled aside a pile of weeds and branches, revealing a small entrance to the tomb. The boss took out a flashlight, turned on the bright light and crawled into the entrance, disappearing from sight. Yo-Yo watched as the little spirits followed him into the tomb. The group anxiously waited outside for about half an hour. Then, with a beam of light from the flashlight, the boss emerged from the entrance. Yo-Yo ran to him excitedly, "Grandpa." The old man picked her up, and the group disappeared into the vast night. Years later, a girl named Yo-Yo, with big eyes, rose to fame in the archaeological world. She possessed a unique pair of yin-yang eyes, the only ones in the world that could see both the living and the dead.